There's a version of today where I sit here and just run through the headlines with you like it's any other Tuesday. But I can't do that today because what dropped on this Raiders team over the last day genuinely reshaped how I'm looking at this entire roster. A star defensive tackle wants out of his current situation, and this team's name keeps coming up. A young player got cut loose in a move that quietly hurts more than the transaction wire lets on. And our head coach finally broke his silence on the one storyline that's been eating at every single person who follows this team since draft weekend. None of this deserves a rushed take. So bear with me because I want to actually sit inside each one of these stories instead of skating across the top of them. First thing first, word broke that Vita Vea wants out of Tampa Bay, and once the reporting started catching up to the initial rumor, one destination kept surfacing above all the others. This exact building right here in Las Vegas. I'll admit my first instinct was pure skepticism. I refreshed my feed, cross-checked it against a couple other outlets, because a rumor this juicy usually collapses under its own weight within an hour. Except it didn't collapse. It got stronger. More names attached to it, more confirmation stacking on top of confirmation, until it stopped being gossip and started being something I had to take seriously. And once you dig into the actual reasoning, it tracks, because Vea has real ties to this region, and by all accounts, landing somewhere close to home is exactly what he's chasing right now. I want to be honest with you about something before I go further. There's a personal layer to this one for me. Watching a player of Polynesian descent openly want to come play for this franchise carries extra weight for a lot of us who follow this team closely, and I'm not going to sit here and act like that doesn't add fuel to my excitement. But let's separate the emotion from the football for a second, because the football case stands entirely on its own. We are not talking about a rotational body here, some camp arm you stash on the practice squad. We're talking about Vita Vea, arguably the most disruptive presence you'll find anywhere on an interior defensive front in this league right now. When a player operating at that level starts signaling real interest in your uniform, you don't sit around thinking about it. You're on the phone that day. Now, here's the piece that complicates the fairy tale a little. Vea's sitting in the final year of his current contract, due $18 million in 2026, and word is he wants a real, long-term extension attached to whatever trade happens. Whoever lands him has to walk into this ready to write a serious check, not just surrender draft capital and call it a day. And this right here is exactly why this rumor has legs for a team like ours. The money is already sitting in the bank. This front office entered free agency holding more cap space than anybody else in the entire league. And even after every move they made this offseason, there's still a meaningful cushion left untouched. Layer on top of that a quarterback room anchored by a rookie contract for the foreseeable future. And you've got an organization with the exact kind of financial room to go make a run at a veteran difference maker like this one. It's rare that the timing on something like this lines up this cleanly. Vea's list apparently wasn't limited to just us either. A few other teams out west got mentioned in the same breath. The Chargers, the Rams, the Niners. But one of those got crossed off almost as fast as it appeared, and it happened right there on camera for everyone to see. Sean McVay got a direct question thrown at him about the situation and didn't leave much wiggle room in his answer. He respected Vea's game, called him a genuine problem to game plan against, but made it plain that his group up front is a group he trusts as currently constructed. That's about as polite a no as you're going to get in this league, without the man actually saying the word. But here's where this story gets interesting beyond just dollars and timing, because there's real history tying these two sides together. John Spytek, who's now working inside the Raiders front office, was actually part of the Tampa Bay regime that originally drafted Vea. He was in the room. He had a direct hand in bringing this guy into the league. That's not some throwaway coincidence. That's an actual relationship built over years. An executive who knows exactly what he's getting, not because he studied tape on the guy, but because he's lived through seasons with him already. And then there's Tom Brady sitting in the middle of all this too, a man who won a championship shoulder to shoulder with Vea in Tampa. If this actually happens, Vea isn't stepping into some cold, unfamiliar building. He's walking back into a room full of people who already understand exactly who he is. And strip all the storylines away for a second, because from a pure roster building standpoint, this fills a hole that's been wide open all offseason. The moment this defense committed to a 3-4 front, the loudest unanswered question became who's actually anchoring that nose tackle spot and eating up blockers in the middle. The edges are stacked with real talent already. The interior has been the missing piece of the puzzle this whole time. Bringing in a two-time Pro Bowler who has made an entire career out of collapsing pockets from the inside out doesn't just plug a hole, it directly solves the exact riddle this scheme has been sitting on since it was first announced. I know there was real frustration earlier this offseason about missing out on a different big name up front, and that frustration was completely valid. But if this actually comes together, it's hard to imagine drawing up a cleaner resolution than landing Vea instead. I also want to give real space to the skeptics here, because there's a legitimate argument on the other side. This roster is still clearly under construction. Nobody's mistaking this team for a finished product the moment training camp closes. So it's fair to ask whether committing serious long-term money to a 31-year-old fits the actual timeline this franchise is on. Here's my answer though. A player of Vea's caliber doesn't move the needle a little. He potentially shoves this entire defense into legitimate top 10, maybe top 15 conversation almost immediately. And from the reporting out there, Vea himself doesn't sound like he's obsessed with chasing an immediate title window. He sounds like a guy chasing security and a real payday, which happens to be exactly what this roster, in this phase of its build, is positioned to offer him. It's honestly reminiscent of bringing in a proven veteran late in his prime to hold down a position group while the young talent around him keeps developing. Vea slotting into that exact kind of role here wouldn't be unusual at all. A steady anchor for everyone else up front to grow beside. So do I want to see this deal actually happen? Zero hesitation. If it were my call, I'd already be dialing Tampa Bay, trying to close this out before anyone else gets in the room. And from what's out there right now, the interest sounds mutual, and there may already be something on the table. If that ends up being accurate, don't be shocked if I've got a Vea jersey ordered before this video's even finished uploading. Let's actually talk numbers, because that's the part everyone's actually curious about. My gut reaction the second I heard this rumor was that it would take a first, maybe a second round selection to get it done. But when you sit with the full context, Tampa Bay just isn't holding much real leverage right now. Vea forced this by requesting the trade publicly himself, which weakens their negotiating hand immediately. He's 31. He wants real long-term money that Tampa apparently isn't ready to offer, and stalling doesn't help their position either. Given all of that, I'd guess the actual cost lands somewhere around a third, fourth, or fifth round pick, possibly with a role player attached to balance the scale. At that price point, this isn't even a tough call anymore. This is the textbook aggressive move a rebuilding team sitting on cap flexibility is supposed to make without flinching. And when you actually look at what he's done in his career, 256 tackles, 35 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, generated by a 347-pound frame that can still get to the passer, it's obvious why this needs to move quickly. I'm hoping this gets settled within the next week or two, because every extra day this drags out is another day a rival team gets a shot to jump in front of us. As good as all of that felt, the same 24-hour window handed us something far harder to swallow. Not long after the Vea story broke, the Raiders confirmed they were moving on from Lucky Tays. I won't pretend that one didn't sting a bit when I first saw it cross the wire. The move came bundled with a handful of other transactions, a defensive end, a linebacker, and a receiver all added at the same time. My honest gut reaction was disappointment, because there's real developmental upside into AC that I've genuinely enjoyed tracking. But context matters here before anyone spirals. This isn't new ground for him. He went through this same exact cycle last offseason, got let go during final roster cuts, cleared waivers, and worked his way right back onto the practice squad. So this doesn't automatically close the book on his time with this franchise. If he clears waivers again this time, don't be surprised in the slightest if this staff brings him right back into the building. He's still raw around the edges, still learning the finer points of playing the position at this level, but the physical upside and the work ethic have never been in question, and that combination usually earns a player a second look somewhere down the road. Plenty of people tied these two stories together immediately, floating the theory that cutting to Ace was really about opening up a roster spot ahead of a potential Vea arrival. And honestly, if that's the actual math behind this, I'm completely at peace with it. Losing a player with genuine long-term upside isn't ideal, but if it's the domino that clears the path to landing someone of Vea's caliber, that's a trade I'll take every single time. And who knows, if the roster numbers ever line back up down the road, there's nothing stopping both guys from ending up in the same building eventually. Picture that interior line for a second, Vea and Taase both anchoring that front together. That's the kind of depth that forces opposing coordinators back to the drawing board. Now let's shift into camp, because veterans officially reported to the facility, and while there wasn't live, padded work happening just yet, that starts tomorrow. We still walked away with real, substantive information straight from the man running the show. This was our first genuine chance to hear from Clint Kubiak heading into the season, and there were two things specifically I'd been waiting on. First, the health update, and it's a good one. Maxx Crosby is fully cleared and set to take part in that opening practice tomorrow, right alongside the rest of the roster. Kubiak confirmed Crosby is getting every rep with the starting unit from the jump. Injury situations always stay fluid once real physical work kicks in, and coaches start tracking how bodies hold up day over day. But as of this moment, Crosby is expected to handle a full workload starting on day one. Given exactly how central he is to everything this defense is trying to accomplish, hearing he's fully healthy and going at full speed right out of the gate is precisely the news this fan base needed heading into camp. But the update everyone had genuinely been holding their breath over all offseason was the quarterback situation, and we finally got a real answer. This has been the single loudest storyline surrounding this organization, especially since the moment Fernando Mendoza landed in that quarterback room on draft weekend. Kubiak didn't dodge it at all. He confirmed straight up that when this team takes the field tomorrow for that first practice, Kirk Cousins is going to be out there as the starting quarterback. But listen closely to the way he actually framed it, because I don't think this is locked down in the slightest. Kubiak was intentional about making it clear that every single position on this roster is an open competition, no exceptions, and that includes the offensive line, the backfield, and yes, the quarterback room too. He specifically said it matters to him to be fair to every player by simply putting whoever has earned it on the field, and that Cousins has earned these opening reps through the level of football he's actually put on tape. But in that same breath, he made it unmistakably clear he wants both Mendoza and the other young arm in that room pushing Cousins hard every single day, all the way through preseason. So here's how I'm choosing to read this. Just because Cousins is technically first team tomorrow doesn't lock in a single thing about who's actually starting once the regular season opens in September. This is a real, ongoing competition, and Kubiak is essentially putting the challenge directly in front of his young quarterbacks, daring them to go earn that job away from a proven veteran through actual on-field performance, not draft capital, not hype, not potential, but results in camp reps and in real preseason snaps. That's exactly the kind of merit-based standard you want to hear heading into a training camp with this much riding on it. So that's where things stand as this offseason winds down, and real football finally takes over. A potential blockbuster trade that could immediately vault this defense into legitimate elite conversation. A tough, understandable cut that might just be clearing space for exactly that move to land. And a head coach who's drawn a clear line at quarterback heading into day one while leaving the door completely open for a genuine earned competition to decide who's actually standing there once it counts in September. There's a lot in motion right now, but for the first time in a while, every single piece of it seems to be pointing toward real, meaningful progress for this franchise. And I'm genuinely locked in watching how each one of these threads unfolds over the coming weeks.